The WOW signal, August 15th, 1977, 11:16 p.m. A radio telescope in Ohio picks up something from space that should not exist. The signal lasted exactly 72 seconds. That's how long the telescope could track any point in the sky as Earth rotated. And in those 72 seconds, it received the most compelling evidence for extraterrestrial intelligence we've ever found. The astronomer reviewing the data couldn't believe what he was seeing. He grabbed a red pen, circled the signal on the printout, and wrote one word in the margin: wow. Here's what made it impossible to dismiss. The signal came through at 1420 megahertz, the hydrogen line. That's the frequency scientists have been saying for decades would be the universal channel for communication, because hydrogen is everywhere in the universe. If aliens wanted to get our attention, that's exactly where they'd broadcast. But it gets better. This wasn't some random burst of noise. It was narrowband, meaning it was focused at one specific frequency, not spread out across many. That's what you get from an artificial transmitter. Nature doesn't do that. At least, not any natural phenomenon we know about. The signal was strong, 30 times stronger than the background noise of space. It was a clear, unmistakable spike rising out of the static, and it came from the direction of Sagittarius. So, naturally, we pointed telescopes back at that exact spot in the sky. And we've been listening ever since. Hundreds of hours of observation. More powerful equipment than we had in 1977. And we've heard nothing. The signal never repeated. Every explanation has been checked and ruled out. Satellite? Wrong frequency? That frequency is protected for astronomy. Space junk reflecting radio waves? The signal was too precise, too focused. Some natural astronomical phenomenon? Show us which one, because we can't find it. In 2017, someone suggested it was a comet. That theory lasted about 5 minutes before other scientists tore it apart. Comets don't emit narrowband radio signals, and the specific comet they blamed wasn't even in the right position when the signal arrived. Jerry Eamon, the guy who wrote "wow" on the printout, has spent decades analyzing this thing. His conclusion? After ruling out everything we know about, he can't identify any natural or human-made source that could have produced it. So, we're left with a signal that matches exactly what we'd expect from an alien transmission. It came from deep space. It was on the perfect frequency. It had all the characteristics of artificial origin. And then, it was gone. Never to return. For 72 seconds in 1977, we might have received a message from someone out there. Or it was the most perfect coincidence in astronomical history. Either way, we still don't know what it was. Hessdalen Lights. There's a valley in Norway where the laws of physics apparently don't apply. The Hessdalen Valley is remote, quiet, and for the last 40 years, it's been home to something that science cannot explain. Lights appear in the sky regularly, sometimes multiple times a week. They hover. They accelerate to impossible speeds. They split into multiple lights and merge back together. And unlike your typical UFO story, these lights have been studied by actual scientists with actual equipment. This started getting attention in the early 1980s when locals couldn't ignore it anymore. Bright lights appearing above the valley, moving in ways that made no sense. So, in 1984, scientists showed up with cameras, radar, spectrum analyzers, the works. And the lights showed up on cue. This is what makes Hessdalen different from every other UFO hotspot on Earth. The scientists could actually study this thing. Radar confirmed that these are solid objects, not optical illusions. Spectrum analysis showed they're emitting radiation across multiple wavelengths, and the accelerations they recorded would generate G-forces that would turn any physical craft into a fireball. One radar track showed an object accelerating from 0 to thousands of kilometers per hour in seconds. That's not how physics works. That kind of acceleration should rip apart anything made of matter. The lights are still appearing. Dr. Erling Strand has been documenting them for decades now. Automated cameras catch them. Instruments measure them. They're absolutely undeniably real. We just have no idea what they are. The usual explanations don't work. Plasma from geological stress? Maybe. But that doesn't explain why they move like they have intelligence, why they respond to observers, or why they can appear on demand during scientific studies. Ball lightning? Wrong. These appear in clear weather, last way too long. and do things ball lightning has never been documented doing. In 2007, they installed a permanent monitoring station. It's still there. It's still catching these lights on camera multiple times a year. So we have a phenomenon that's been scientifically measured, photographed by automated systems, tracked by radar, and confirmed by spectrum analysis. It's real. It's documented. It's been studied for 40 years, and we still have absolutely no idea what causes it or why it happens in this one valley in Norway. The Bloop, summer of 1997. Multiple underwater listening stations across the Pacific Ocean pick up a sound unlike anything in the entire catalog of known ocean sounds. It was loud enough to be detected by sensors over 5,000 kilometers apart. That makes it one of the loudest sounds ever recorded in the ocean. The sound rose rapidly in frequency over about a minute. Scientists call this profile a bloop. And here's what made everyone's head spin. It sounded biological. The pattern matched what you'd expect from a living creature vocalizing, except no living creature on Earth could make a sound that loud. To be heard by sensors thousands of kilometers apart, whatever made this sound would have to be far, far larger than a blue whale. And we've recorded plenty of blue whale sounds. This was nothing like them. The sound came from a remote area of the South Pacific, west of the southern tip of South America. We're talking about one of the deepest, least explored parts of the ocean. 6 kilometers deep in places, a vast underwater wilderness where we've barely looked. For years, this was a complete mystery. Marine biologists confirm no known animal could produce it. The frequency profile didn't match earthquakes or volcanoes. People started talking about giant creatures in the deep ocean that we've never discovered. Then in 2005, NOAA said they figured it out. Ice quakes, sounds from huge icebergs cracking and breaking apart. The timing and location roughly match the Antarctic ice shelf, except the frequency signature doesn't perfectly match typical ice quakes. Ice cracking makes sharper, more sudden sounds. The bloop had this smooth, gradual frequency rise that's more characteristic of biological sources. And if it was just ice breaking, which happens all the time, why haven't we recorded another sound like it? Icebergs have been cracking constantly for the past 25 years. Where are all the other bloops? Some acoustic researchers aren't convinced by the ice explanation. Dr. Christopher Fox, who first detected and named the bloop, acknowledged the iceberg theory, but pointed out that it still doesn't match perfectly. So, we're left with a sound that was definitely recorded, definitely came from the deep ocean, and doesn't quite fit any explanation we have. Either it was an unusually weird ice quake, or something massive vocalized once in 1997 and hasn't made a sound since. And we've mapped the surface of Mars better than we've mapped our own ocean floor. If something enormous were living in the deepest trenches, it could avoid us pretty easily. The bloop sits in NOAA's database of unexplained sounds, a recording that doesn't quite match any confirmed explanation, which means either we don't fully understand ice, or something very large is down there in the depths where we've never been. Fast radio bursts. In 2007, an astronomer was digging through old telescope data when he found something that broke physics, a burst of radio waves from deep space. It lasted only milliseconds. But in those milliseconds, it released more energy than our sun emits in an entire day. These things are called fast radio bursts, FRBS, and they're one of the most energetic and baffling things we've ever detected in the universe. They're incredibly brief, less than 5 milliseconds usually. But during that tiny fraction of a second, they're outputting as much energy as 500 million suns. And they're coming from billions of light years away, from other galaxies. What makes them really weird is how the signal arrives. Lower frequencies reach us slightly after higher frequencies. That dispersion tells us these bursts traveled through ionized gas across enormous distances. These aren't coming from nearby. They're cosmological, from other galaxies billions of light years away. Since 2007, we've detected hundreds of them. Most burst once and never repeat. Random points in the sky, no warning, one flash and done. But some repeat. One source, FRB 12110, 2, has been bursting irregularly since 2012. Sometimes it goes off dozens of times in a day, sometimes nothing for months. We traced it to a dwarf galaxy 3 billion light-years away. Even knowing where it's coming from doesn't help. We still can't explain what's producing the bursts. The energy requirements are insane. To generate that much radio power at such vast distances requires more energy than anything we've observed, except supernovas, black hole collisions, or gamma-ray bursts. But FRBS have completely different characteristics than any of those. Some people think they're from magnetars, neutron stars with incredibly powerful magnetic fields. But magnetar flares don't quite match what we're seeing. Others suggest colliding neutron stars or black holes eating stars. But those should be one-time catastrophes, not repeating sources. Here's what's really strange. FRBS are narrowband and focused. They're not scattered across many frequencies. They're concentrated in precise ranges. That kind of coherence is hard to achieve naturally. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb, a serious scientist, not a crank, has suggested these might be artificial, maybe the byproduct of enormous alien power systems designed to propel spacecraft using radio waves. Most scientists think that's unlikely, but it says something that a respected astronomer seriously proposed it. Because the natural explanations are so inadequate that alien megastructure is on the table. We've discovered that the universe is doing something we didn't know was possible, generating millisecond bursts of radio energy across cosmic distances with power exceeding almost anything we've ever observed. Whether it's natural or artificial, it's something that doesn't fit our models of how the universe works. And the fact that some sources repeat means this isn't just random catastrophes. Something out there is producing these bursts regularly, following patterns we don't understand. The Baltic Sea Anomaly, June 2011. A Swedish treasure hunting team is scanning the floor of the Baltic Sea looking for shipwrecks. Their sonar picks up something that shouldn't be there. A 60-meter disk sitting on the seafloor, perfectly circular, with what looks like a 300-meter track behind it, like something dragged it or it slid across the bottom. When they brought the sonar image to the surface, people couldn't believe what they were seeing. This thing had straight lines, right angles, features that looked geometric, deliberate, artificial. So in 2012, they went back with divers to see it up close. The divers reported that the object looked like stone, but with features that seemed impossibly precise. Right-angled corners, straight edges, what appeared to be stairs carved into the structure. And then the weird stuff started happening. When the dive boat positioned itself directly above the object, equipment started failing. Satellite phones stopped working. Electrical systems shut down. Instruments went haywire. They moved 200 meters away. Everything worked fine again. They took samples. The labs analyzed them and found volcanic rock, basalt, which is common enough in geological formations. Except the Baltic Sea floor in that region isn't volcanic. The nearest volcanic activity is hundreds of kilometers away. So, how did a 60-meter basalt disk end up on the seafloor there? Geologists who looked at the images were split. Some said it had to be a glacial boulder, something shaped by Ice Age glaciers. But the regularity of the features, the right angles, the apparent geometric patterns, that's really hard to explain through glacial activity. Critics say underwater photography creates illusions. Shadows and weird lighting make natural formations look artificial. But the divers who actually touched it insist the features are too regular, too precise to be natural erosion. The electromagnetic effects are the real puzzle. Multiple teams have reported the same thing. Equipment fails near the object, works fine when you move away. This thing is somehow affecting electronics. No one has proposed an explanation for that, which doesn't require properties we don't understand. In 2019, some marine geologists published a paper saying it's probably glacial, but that doesn't address the electromagnetic effects, the volcanic composition in a non-volcanic area, or the geometric features the divers reported. The Baltic Sea Anomaly is still down there, 85 meters under the surface. Several documentaries have covered it. Investigations have been done, but no one has definitively explained what it is. Either it's an unusually regular natural formation that happens to mess with electronics for reasons we don't understand, or it's something artificial that ended up on the seafloor and nobody knows how or when. The problem is, we don't have funding for a thorough study. So it sits there, partially investigated, substantially unexplained. just another underwater mystery in an ocean we've barely explored. The Tunguska Event, June 30th, 1908, 7:17 in the morning. Something exploded over Siberia with the force of 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. The explosion flattened 2,000 square kilometers of forest. People 60 kilometers away were knocked off their feet. Seismic stations across Eurasia detected it. The shock wave circled the planet twice, and it left no crater. Witnesses near the town of Vanavara saw a blue light moving across the sky, then a flash brighter than the sun. Seconds later, the blast wave arrived, shattering windows, knocking down buildings, throwing people to the ground. A pillar of fire shot 20 kilometers into the sky. The explosions could be heard 800 kilometers away. And for days afterward, the night sky across Europe and Asia glowed so bright people could read newspapers at midnight. The explosion happened in one of the most remote areas of Russia. Nobody got there to investigate for almost 20 years. When Russian scientist Leonid Kulik finally reached the site in 1927, what he found was astonishing. 80 million trees knocked down, all pointing radially outward from a central point. But at the exact epicenter, trees were still standing, stripped of branches, driven into the ground like telephone poles. This meant the explosion happened in the air, directly above, and there was no crater, no impact site, no meteorite fragments, nothing. Kulik and every expedition since have searched. They found nothing to explain what exploded. The accepted explanation is an asteroid or comet that exploded in the atmosphere 5 to 10 kilometers up due to heating and pressure. The object completely disintegrated, leaving no fragments. This works mathematically, but computer simulations struggle to match all the observed details. And most meteors that explode in the atmosphere leave some fragments. Tunguska left none. Alternative theories have been wild. A small black hole passing through Earth. An alien spacecraft's nuclear reactor exploding. An antimatter meteor. In 2020, researchers analyzing microscopic particles from the soil found unusual compositions suggesting the impactor was a rare type of meteorite that would vaporize completely. That might explain the lack of fragments. But here's what keeps me up at night about Tunguska. If that explosion had occurred 4 hours and 47 minutes later, it would have happened over St. Petersburg, then Russia's capital. Hundreds of thousands dead. It hit uninhabited forest by pure chance. Tunguska proved that Earth can be struck by objects large enough to destroy an entire region with zero warning. And we still can't definitively say what hit us or why it left so little evidence. The Pioneer Anomaly. In the 1980s, NASA scientists tracking our first interstellar probes discovered something impossible. Both spacecraft were slowing down. Pioneer 10 and Pioneer 11 were identical probes launched in the early 1970s to explore Jupiter and Saturn, then continue into interstellar space. After their flybys, their trajectories could be predicted with extraordinary precision using Newton's laws. But they weren't where they were supposed to be. Both spacecraft were decelerating by a tiny but measurable amount, about 1/10,000,000th of Earth's gravity. That's incredibly small, but over vast distances and long time periods, it adds up to significant positional errors. The deceleration was consistent. Both spacecraft showed the same unexpected slowing, pointing toward the sun, like something was pulling them back. NASA scientists spent years trying to explain it. Fuel leaks? Calculations showed that couldn't account for it. Solar wind? Too weak. Hidden matter in the outer solar system? No evidence for it. The anomaly was too consistent and well documented to dismiss, too small to be an obvious error, yet too large to be explained by any known force. Some physicists started proposing radical ideas. Maybe Newton's laws were slightly wrong at vast distances. Maybe we needed to modify general relativity. Maybe dark matter was concentrated near the solar system. For decades, the Pioneer Anomaly was a genuine mystery in physics. Then in 2012, researchers finally figured it out. Thermal recoil. The spacecraft's radioactive power sources emitted heat that radiated into space. The radiation was slightly asymmetric, creating tiny but persistent thrust, pushing the spacecraft backward. The thermal solution matched the data remarkably well. It's now the accepted explanation. But Here's what makes the Pioneer Anomaly significant. For decades, two spacecraft were behaving in ways that violated fundamental physics, and the world's best physicists couldn't figure out why. It took extraordinarily detailed analysis of the spacecraft's heat emission patterns to solve it, and that raises an uncomfortable question. If the anomaly had been slightly larger, beyond what thermal effects could explain, would we have had to rewrite physics? And are there other anomalies out there, just beyond our ability to detect, waiting to reveal that our understanding of the universe is incomplete? Earthquake lights. For centuries, people reported seeing strange lights in the sky before major earthquakes. Scientists dismissed them as superstition. Then cameras started capturing them. Earthquake lights are real. They appear as glowing orbs, sheet lightning without storms, emanations from the ground, or aurora-like displays. And they've been photographed before every major earthquake in modern history. In 1965, photographers captured lights over Matsushiro, Japan, during a months-long earthquake swarm. The lights appeared repeatedly, ruling out hallucination or observer error. In 2007, security cameras across Peru captured spectacular light displays before a magnitude 8.0 earthquake. Bright flashes and glowing clouds, visible on multiple cameras simultaneously. In 2008, similar lights were photographed over China before the devastating Sichuan earthquake that killed nearly 70,000 people. And in 2011, cameras all over Japan captured earthquake lights during the Tohoku earthquake, the magnitude 9.1 event that triggered the tsunami and Fukushima disaster. Bright flashes and strange glows visible as the ground shook. The phenomenon is documented, undeniable, but we have no idea what causes it. Scientists have proposed theories. Piezoelectric effects, crystals in rock generating electricity when stressed, but the energy scales don't match. The lights are too bright, too extensive. Plasma generation from ionized gas, that requires specific atmospheric conditions that don't always exist when the lights appear. Radon emission, concentrations aren't high enough to create the observed luminosity. Disruption of Earth's magnetic field doesn't explain ground-level lights or the timing. None of these theories adequately explains what we're seeing. The most disturbing aspect is that earthquake lights often appear hours or even days before the earthquake. The underlying process begins long before the actual rupture. If we understood earthquake lights, we might be able to predict earthquakes, potentially saving countless lives. But despite decades of study, we're still at square one. We can photograph them, we can measure them. We just have no idea what causes them or why they're connected to seismic activity. It's at the intersection of geology, atmospheric science, and plasma physics, and none of those fields can explain what's happening. Either we're missing fundamental understanding of how tectonic stress affects the environment, or earthquake lights are revealing processes we haven't discovered yet. The Taos Hum. Since the early 1990s, about 2% of people in Taos, New Mexico, and dozens of other locations worldwide have been hearing a sound that no instrument can detect. A constant low-pitched hum, like a distant diesel engine idling. It's more noticeable indoors, more noticeable at night, and it seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Here's what makes it strange. Only about 2% of people can hear it. Two people sitting in the same room will have completely different experiences. One hears nothing. The other is going insane from an incessant drone. In 1993, Congress actually directed scientists to investigate. They interviewed people who heard it, tested acoustics, monitored the environment. The conclusion? People are genuinely experiencing something. They're not making it up. But instruments detect nothing unusual. Since then, similar hums have been reported worldwide. Bristol, England has one, Windsor, Ontario, New Zealand, Australia, Europe. Every time, about 2% of the population reports hearing this persistent sound that can't be measured. Scientists have tried to explain it. Industrial noise from distant factories. Shutting down the factories doesn't stop the hum. Electromagnetic sensitivity. The hum is heard in areas with no unusual electromagnetic activity. Tinnitus. Hum hearers don't show elevated rates of hearing disorders. One theory involves microseisms, extremely low-frequency vibrations in Earth's crust from ocean waves and wind. Maybe some people are sensitive to these and experience them as sound, but microseisms are constant and global. They occur everywhere, all the time. Why would the hum be reported in specific locations? Why would only 2% of people be affected? For those who hear it, the psychological impact is severe. They can't sleep, can't concentrate, can't find relief. Some have moved away from affected areas only to discover they still hear it. The Taos Hum remains unexplained. It's either a genuine acoustic phenomenon our instruments can't detect, or some previously unknown form of human sensory perception. But whatever it is, it's real to those who experience it. And science has no answers for why 2% of the population hears a sound that nobody can measure or locate. Ball lightning. For centuries, witnesses have described glowing spheres appearing during thunderstorms, floating through the air, passing through walls, and sometimes exploding. Scientists dismissed this as hallucination until too many credible witnesses came forward. Typical reports describe luminous spheres a few centimeters to several meters across. They glow white, blue, orange, or red. They appear during or after thunderstorms. They float or drift through the air, sometimes moving against the wind. They last from seconds to minutes, far longer than any electrical discharge should persist. Most mysteriously, ball lightning is reported to pass through solid objects. Multiple witnesses describe it entering buildings through closed windows, drifting through rooms, and exiting through walls, leaving no marks. The phenomenon has been reported by credible witnesses for centuries. In 1753, a Russian scientist was killed by what appeared to be ball lightning while experimenting with electricity. In 1963, a professor of electronics witnessed ball lightning enter an aircraft during flight and travel down the aisle. Despite thousands of sightings, ball lightning has never been reliably captured on film or studied under controlled conditions. It appears unpredictably, lasts briefly, and vanishes. Scientists have theories. Maybe it's plasma held together by magnetic fields. But creating long-lasting plasma in open air is extremely difficult. Chemical reactions, vaporized silicon from lightning-struck soil combining with oxygen. Experiments have created small glowing orbs this way, but they last only seconds. Electromagnetic theories, quantum effects, these require physics that's purely theoretical and unproven. In 2012, scientists in China accidentally captured ball lightning on video and spectrum analysis. The spectrum showed silicon, iron, and calcium, supporting the vaporized soil theory, but the observation lasted only 1.3 seconds. Ball lightning is too well documented to dismiss. Thousands of credible witnesses, some injured or killed by it. Yet we can't create it in labs, can't predict when it will appear, and can't explain how it does what witnesses describe. Either it's a plasma phenomenon we don't understand, or it involves physics we haven't discovered. Until we can observe it systematically, it remains one of atmospheric science's most persistent mysteries. These 10 phenomena aren't folklore. They're not urban legends. They're documented, measured, and confirmed by credible scientists using proper methodology. The WOW signal remains our strongest candidate for extraterrestrial communication. The Hessdalen Lights continue appearing and being measured by instruments that confirm they're real. The Bloop suggested something massive in the deep ocean. Fast radio bursts release impossible energy across cosmic distances. The Baltic Sea Anomaly sits on the ocean floor with no adequate explanation. Tunguska demonstrated we can be devastated by something that leaves no trace. The Pioneer Anomaly showed spacecraft behaving in ways that violated Newton's laws. Earthquake lights prove seismic activity creates luminous phenomena through unknown mechanisms. The Taos Hum affects thousands who hear sounds instruments can't detect. And ball lightning has been witnessed for centuries but never explained. Science hasn't dismissed these. It's investigated them, measured them, confirmed they're real. What science can't do is explain them. These represent the frontier of human knowledge, where what we observe exceeds what we can explain. They're not pseudoscience or conspiracy theories. They're genuine mysteries that credible scientists acknowledge and struggle with. And maybe most importantly, they remind us that despite all our technology and sophistication, the universe still holds secrets we haven't unlocked. Reality is stranger than our theories account for. Some of the most important discoveries in science come from confronting phenomena that refuse to fit our models. These unexplained events force us to expand our understanding or admit we're missing something fundamental about how the universe works. These are the phenomena science cannot ignore and cannot yet explain. They exist in our data, our observations, and the gap between what we know and what the universe is showing us. And they wait, patient and persistent, for the moment when human knowledge finally advances enough to understand what they're trying to tell us.